It's not something that I've heard of. And given Australia's kind of really harsh line towards Kiwis at the moment, I don't think we should play ball with them at all.
Australia stunned the government last week when it announced that from next year, New Zealanders studying at tertiary institutions there will have to pay international student fees. That decision will more than triple the costs of tertiary education for many of the 12,000 New Zealanders who study there. Following that surprise, the Foreign Minister Jerry Brownlee met with his Australian counterpart Julie Bishop in Sydney, where he accepted the lack of a heads-up was a one-off. But Bill English says Australia gave no assurance that more such policies aren't on the way.
We're always keen to hear assurances that entitlements aren't going to be changed. We haven't had those assurances last week, but I think we have got the grounds for ongoing discussion where we would be seeking to get some assurances.
Mr English says the government has no interest in a tit-for-tat exchange with Australia and won't be reducing entitlements or rights for their citizens in New Zealand. From Parliament for Morning Report, Benedict Collins.
7:16. Beekeepers and iwi in Northland say they've been kept in the dark about the plant disease myrtle rust, which they say could devastate the region's honey industry. But the Ministry for Primary Industries says it's doing all it can to spread the word about the yellow fungus. Adriana Webber reports.
Myrtle rust was found at a nursery in Kirikiri last week, and yesterday a second case was confirmed in a garden on the same street. The airborne disease is a potential threat to native plants including manuka and pahutakawa, and it's got the Ngāti Hini Forestry Trust worried. The trust owns 4 horticultural orchards in the area and has substantial interest in 2 forest leases. Its chair, Peter Tipene, says the trust hasn't been directly informed about the threat and has had to rely on second-hand information.
We know that this is a huge threat to our assets, and in particular, given that it really affects manuka, kanuka, rata, ramarama, pohutukawa, etc., not to mention the exotic species. So we're really worried. Certainly MPI is not talking to us about this.
Mr Tipene says that's not good enough, especially given the risk it poses to one of the region's rapidly growing industries.
I'm part of collectives in the manuka honey industry up here in Northland, Taitokerau, and it's a burgeoning industry up here, and it would be a severe blow should this really catch on amongst the native plants up here.
Kerry Fountain is a beekeeper with about 300 hives in the region and mainly sells manuka, pahutakawa and northern rata honey products. He also feels he's not being kept in the loop by the authorities.
It'd be nice to know a bit more information about it, I guess. It'd be nice to know how fast this actually works, how fast the spores on myrtle rust actually affects these trees and how quick it is. That's what I'd like to know.
But in a statement, the Ministry for Primary Industries says it's surprised by those comments and is doing all it can to inform people about the situation.
We have a number of local contacts with the local hapu and continue to reach wider into that community. The hapu receive a daily update from the team. We have very definitely engaged with Ngāti Hine representatives. The beekeepers' industry body Apiculture New Zealand is a part of the decision-making body for the biosecurity response and well involved in the operation.
The ministry says it has also been dropping flyers with information about myrtle rust at supermarkets and shopping areas in Kirikiri. For Morning Report, Adriana Webber.
7:19. MPI's Jeff Gwynn is with us again on this one. Morning, Jeff.
Morning, Susie.
Are there any other further cases coming to light?
At this stage, we have the original nursery that was affected. We also have another confirmed find within the 500-metre surveillance zone of that nursery, which is a single tree in a private residence, which we're dealing with. We also have a third suspected find, which is in a nursery some 3 kilometres away from the original affected nursery. At this stage, our testing's been inconclusive. However, we have a restricted notice on the premise.
So, broadly speaking, the situation is the same as yesterday, but what does it say about the fact that you do have these other confirmed or suspected cases? Does it mean that your efforts to control this are not working?
Look, we've always been quite clear that rust diseases are incredibly difficult to manage, and the is no international evidence that it's ever been done successfully overseas. So we realise we have a challenge in front of us, but at this stage we believe we have two isolated cases which are containable, and we're approaching it with that as our consideration.
Do you think the MPI is getting enough information out there?
Look, I don't think you can ever get enough information out there. We have an extensive media campaign, whether it be interviews like this, digital, print. We have flyers in prominent places throughout Kirikiri, including supermarkets and a major chocolate factory, which has a high amount of visitors. But you can never communicate enough, so we're continuing to work in that space.
We've been hearing from, I think, Feijoa growers in particular in the area that they've been trying to organise a meeting, getting a briefing from MPI, but to no avail.
That's news to me. I certainly would expect us to do that, and I can certainly follow up on that.
So do you think that this is something that people are sufficiently concerned about, but perhaps you need more resources?
I don't think it's a question of resources, Susie. I think we have a number. We are actually operating with a number of key people around our governance table, and I think you've, in your earlier article, you've suggested some of them. We have the chairman of the Forest Owners Association, chief executive of apiculture. We have the chairman of the nursery and garden industry, and of course we're reliant on them to use their networks into their industries as well. And also, in terms of iwi specifically, we have had, and since April, when we started this response in relation to Raoul Island, we've had iwi representation from Te Apuri and a representative from the Maori Leaders Forum who's Ngāti Kuri affiliated.
Jeff, Gwyn, thank you very much for your time again. Appreciate it. He's from MPI talking about myrtle rust. It's 22 minutes past 7.
A Decile 1 Kura Kaupapa Māori school arguably has the best scholarship achievement rate in the whole of New Zealand. RNZ analysis shows that Kaitaia's Te Rangi a Niwaniwa got one scholarship pass for every 1.3 Year 13 students last year. The results put the kura above an elite group of private and high decile schools with big budgets and students from well-off families. Here's our education correspondent John Gerritsen.
On average, secondary schools get one scholarship exam pass for every 26 Year 13 students. But the 3 scholarships won by 2 students at Te Rangi a Niwaniwa last year give it a scholarship pass for every 1.3 of its 4 Year 13s, easily the best ratio in the country. Even if you cut the figures a different way and measure against the total number of secondary schools in all year levels at the school, it remains in the top 3. The tumuaki, Te Irirangi Tawhara, was initially surprised to hear the kura is sitting alongside high decile and private schools, but says it makes sense given the work teachers and students put in.
When you look at it in the bigger picture and the amount of effort and time that we put into our tamariki, it's not too much of a surprise that they are doing well in our subjects, which are te reo Māori, te reo rangatira.
Te Irirangi Tawhara says children have to work hard to get scholarship passes, even in a language they speak at school and at home. She says the kura usually gets scholarship exam passes, and it's important for children in a Decile 1 community to do well.
A lot of our tamariki have barriers and challenges before they even step inside our doors. When you have our tamariki achieving well within our kura and they step out into the community, they're role models and, I guess, examples of tino rangatiratanga manamutuhaka, is what we call it, displaying excellence and having their own independence and standing proud with that.
RNZ's calculations indicate only Auckland Private School St Cuthbert's College and single-sex state school Wellington College also had scholarship ratios better than 1 for every 2 Year 13s. 2 Decile 1 kura, Te Kura Kokiri in Tauranga and Hastings Kura Kaupapa Māori o Ngāti Kahununu ki Heratonga also had excellent results. Other high-performing lower decile schools include Decile 4 Mount Roskill Grammar. It got 50 scholarships, 3 of them outstanding, the most of any school in deciles 1 through 5. The principal, Greg Watson, says the school encourages students to sit scholarship exams.
We see it as an opportunity for them to demonstrate their capabilities at the top end, so to mark themselves out as highly capable lifelong learners, and also an opportunity for them to know themselves as a learner as they take up the ultimate challenge. Scholarship's not easy, and so goal setting, planning, collaboration, resilience all come into play.
Greg Watson says he doesn't see school decile as a barrier to achievement.
decile labelling is to do with socio-economic factors, not to do with capability, not to do with kids' aspiration or resourcefulness. And so it's just as important for our students as for any students to show what they can do.
RNZ's analysis shows 4 schools have got the most scholarships in each of the past 4 years. They are Wellington College and Auckland Schools, Auckland Grammar, Westlake Boys High School and Maclean's College. For Morning Report, John Gerritsen.
26 minutes past 7, and at Stay with Māori Education, are Labour's Māori MPs at odds with their leader over charter schools? Well, speaking on TVNZ's Q&A programme at the weekend, Labour list candidate and Māori campaign director Willie Jackson implied Labour's policy on charter schools was up for negotiation.
Well, they'll get rid of the name and they'll get rid of the concept, but the principle of turning kids' lives around is something that Chris Hipkins believes in and all of Labour believes in. So call the school whatever you like.
Andrew Little, the Labour leader, is in our Wellington studio. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Is the ground shifting on charter schools? Are they now seen as a good thing?
No, not at all. Labour's policy is very clear. We are opposed to charter schools. We don't like the idea that charter schools have been set up to allow untrained, non-registered teachers in front of kids and not teaching the school curriculum. So Willie Jackson is absolutely right, and we all share the same objective. We want schools and a learning environment that is going to ensure that children are prepared for success, have the basis on which to achieve success, and we have to have a school system that creates the environment to allow that to happen.
You're not really all on the same page here, though, because within the last year, Willie Jackson has been a vocal advocate for charter schools. Indeed, some quotes, if I can just read you them. It says here, "I truly believe in the partnership school model." That's a direct quote from Willie Jackson. Also, he says he gives Chris Hipkins an E for trying to scrap them.
Willie Jackson is a Labour Party candidate, and he signs up to the Labour Party policy. That's it. That's a fact, and that's is what has happened and is going to happen. But Willie Jackson, and I share absolutely and utterly with Willie Jackson the fact that he wants Māori children to succeed in our education system. We need that, because the reality is that when it comes to poor performance in education, Māori children are overrepresented at the wrong end of the statistics. We just heard the item about kura kaupapa. The Labour Party is the party of kura kaupapa. We're the party of special character schools. We understand the need for good learning environments and to get the best out of kids. That hasn't gone away, but we do have some bottom lines, which is that the people who stand in front of our children got to be trained, registered teachers, and they've got to teach to the national curriculum.
You say that he wants the same thing as you, but I'm not quite sure that is right, because you knew his views, but yet you approached him to stand for Labour, didn't you?
I'm not quite sure where that question gets us. We have an education. The Labour Party.
Well, you have a candidate who doesn't share your views on charter schools.
We have an education policy that is the Labour policy, and that is about kids having an education system and a learning environment where they get to succeed.
So are you going to ask him to pull himself in on this then?
Willie Jackson signs up to Labour policies. He has done. And he signs up to the very thing we want, which is success for our children.
But he runs a charter school, Mr. Little.
Yeah, he does.
So how does that mesh with being a Labour candidate?
Well, he's got a school where every teacher in it is trained and registered, and he's got a school that teaches to the national curriculum.
It's still a partnership school, though. It's still a charter school.
So if the objective is about the best environment for our kids and every child learning and achieving success, he totally signs up to that. You see,
he signs up to the partnership school model. He runs a partnership school. You're saying, though, that Labour Party policy is not that. I'm just pointing out that there is a massive gulf between those two things.
No, there's not a massive
he's your
gulf.
Candidate.
There's not a massive gulf between it, because what we all know and understand, and look, Labour understands this absolutely. We have always been, since our inception as a political party.
But he can't separate himself in this way, can he?
No, listen, because it's important we get this very clear and absolutely straight, and why education is so important. Labour has always been the party of education. We were when Peter Fraser was Minister of Education and created a world-class education system. Since I've been leader, we did a massive project called The Future of Work. Grant Robertson led it. And at the heart of that project, at the heart of the conclusions, the consensus that we achieved across the board with business, with unions, with Māori, iwi, all sorts of interests and stakeholders. They all said we've got to get education right. Everybody wants education right. And what lies at the heart of good education is good teachers in front of our kids. That's the environment that we want. And Willie Jackson has totally signed up to that, and he wants it for Māori kids, and he should do. And we need more advocates for better education for Māori children. And we all want it for every child.
But you're going to say you're going to close the charter schools, aren't you, if you get into government come September? So does that mean that the charter school that Willie Jackson currently is part of running, that will shut?
We are going to have an education system and learning environments that are going to ensure that our children achieve success, because nothing less will do. The reason why we did
I understand that, Mr. Little, but with respect, that doesn't answer the question, which is that charter school going to close?
It totally answers the question. It's about an education system. So the reason why we subscribe to an education system that gives every child the best chance of success that they can achieve is we need our education system to be the great leveller in a sense. So regardless of the circumstances to which you're born, you get world-class, high-quality education to prepare you for success. And that's become even more important in the world that we're facing in the future, with technology changing what we do and how we do it.
But is the charter school that Willie Jackson is part of running, is that going to close?
We're going to have an education system of, and it will include kura kaupapa, it will include special character schools, it will include all the publicly funded types of schools.
Let me put this another way. Let me put this another way. Is the school that Willie Jackson is part of running, is that going to remain open should you become the next government leader?
We will have schools, including...
It's a really simple yes
I know
or no,
it is,
Mr.
and I know because...
But this is important to people, because this is clearly something very close to Willie Jackson. It's very close to him. And this is also, it would seem, direct competition. It's directly opposite what Labour Party policy is. So is the charter school that Willie Jackson is part of running, is that going to remain open?
I cannot answer that question without challenging your fundamental proposition, which is that these somehow are diametrically opposed. They are not. And let me go back over it again. What we want in terms of learning environments, what are the bottom lines for good quality education, and the schools that will be publicly funded will be
Are you not going to give us a direct answer to that question, Mr. Little?
Well, the answer is pretty clear. We will have schools, including special character schools and good learning environments for all children that have as their bottom lines trained, registered teachers in front of children. So you will have special character
schools. Is that going to be the new name for charter schools under a Labour government?
Well, we've had special character schools for many, many years. It was the Labour...
Is that how the charter schools are going to be allowed to remain open, Mr. Little?
No. But I think that you run the risk of turning this into this simplistic argument, mindless argument, with all due respect, that, charter school, no charter school, Willie hates, public schools and Labour hates charter schools.
You're the ones who said you want to get rid of charter schools.
We do, yes, because the charter school model, with its completely distorted formula for funding, is not sustainable. It's a con.
So is this a rebranding exercise?
No, it's not a rebranding exercise. It's about a good quality education system that gives every child, regardless of the circumstances of their birth, the conditions and the chance for success. Nothing less will do in New Zealand in the 21st century. We have a ways to go, because what's happening now, the education system now, is still failing far too many. And even with the so-called elevated NCA level, elevated level of achievement for NCA, it's actually just smoke and mirrors. And we've got to change that if we're going to prepare our children for success for that world of the future, and we're going to do that.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming into the studio this morning, Andrew Little, the Labour Party leader. It's now 26 minutes to 8.
And coming up before 8 on Morning Report, Winston Peake.
After a complaint it's not up to standard. Both Fletcher Building and the Australian supplier Steelforce say they're not aware of any problems with the steel, and Fletcher says it is cooperating with the inquiry. A former Auckland Council chief executive is warning a plan to double rates on a central Auckland hotel may not be legal. Peter Winder says by law